And now,
it's 10 a.m.
Let's just get down to it.
And it's time for your sports fix.
Strap yourselves in, folks.
From two guys who have covered the teams you're passionate about for years.
We are professionals.
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone. Very happy Tuesday to everybody out there. Ben rolling solo today. Christian Esparza, you're basically the co-host today. You're producing. You got to do multiple jobs, but that's the business.
Do what we got to do, man.
Whatever you have to do to make sure that Jake's life is nice and comfortable. Make sure that Jake is
hope he's
well
having
taken
fun.
care of.
I
hope he is.
I hope he's having a good time.
The worst part of traveling, if you haven't been paying attention or you're just tuning in, Jake is on a Disney cruise right now. And last week, what was it, a week ago Friday, it'll be 2 weeks ago this Friday, he broke his humerus, the upper bone in his arm, skiing. He was skiing up at Snow Basin or something. I don't know where he was. And he said his skis crossed, and he fell and broke his arm. So he had to do that, and then he had a week off to go on a cruise, to go on a Disney cruise, and he was not excited about the travel aspect of it, and he'd never been on a cruise before. You've never been on a cruise, Christian?
I've been on a cruise, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How long?
3 days.
3 days.
Nothing crazy.
Okay,
but it was
3 is
like
nice and short.
Yeah, like out of San Diego and into like Baja California and the upper part of Mexico.
Okay. Yeah, I think I did 5 days, and it's different, and I get, depending on what your pleasures are, if you just want to be fed and lay by a pool and you don't mind other people, you're going to have a great time on a cruise. If you're looking for time away, if you're looking for space and peace and quiet and like nice food, like fancy food, if you're a foodie who wants to go on the road and try the best local restaurants with the artisan chefs, it's probably not what you're getting.
And apparently Jake deals with vertigo sometimes. So I think that is a big part of
Jake's
his worry.
also secretly a 70-year-old woman who has vertigo. So shout out Jake. If he sits up in bed too quickly, he gets dizzy. So, he's worried about the motion sickness, the vertigo, the broken arm. He's not really a Disney guy. I'm not sure he likes being confined to small spaces. And I don't know how much he likes people or fun. So
he's either having the time of his life or he's miserable.
He's either reinvented himself and is really going to enjoy the cruise, which, you know what? That is the best part of life, is finding out a new pleasure, finding out something that you like that you didn't know you liked before and leaning into it. Or you can simply just say, I'm not going to change. I'm 40, whatever Jake is, and I'm stuck in my ways. I'm willing to bet that that's how he's feeling. If I had to put money down on how Jake's adapting, I'd say not well. But I also hope he's having a good time, and his wife's having a good time. The kids are having a good time. I did see one photo. It looked like they had made it to Florida, which is where they're taking off from.
Well, that's good. We'll see Monday. We'll see what kind of mood he's in Monday. He might be really happy to be back.
And then he's got to come back and talk about the All-Star game. I think the reason he wanted to go next week, and he was complaining because now he's got to miss a couple of Jazz games, including last night's game, which we will talk about. We'll also talk to Jaren Weitzman coming up here at 11:05. He's going to join us. He's an NBA reporter. And Cole Bagley's going to join us at 11:30. So we got a lot to talk about today. But I do think Jake particularly hates the All-Star game. I think he does like covering the Jazz games. And so this trip being scheduled over his 4 Jazz games going into the All-Star break, only to come back and have to cover the actual All-Star game itself. Probably not Jake's ideal scenario. Anyways, the Utah Jazz do beat the Miami Heat last night, 115-111, in a game they were absolutely trying to boot. They were trying to punt that game. The same thing we've seen from the Jazz over the last 3 games. It's drawn more attention over the last 2 because the Jazz did blow a 17-point lead to the Orlando Magic 3 nights ago and fell in Orlando without Lauri, Markkanen, or Jaren Jackson Jr. on the floor. And then last night, the Jazz tried to do it again and didn't succeed. The Jazz were up 3 going into the fourth quarter. Jaren Jackson, Lauri Markkanen didn't play. Will Hardy was asked after the game if he ever got close to putting them back in. He said very bluntly, no, that's not the plan. It's not what the Jazz are going to try to do. And the Jazz still found a way to outscore Miami in the fourth, 30-29, and escape with that 115-111 victory, fueled by young players, vastly, I thought, outplaying several very good players in the NBA, including Bam Adebayo, a multi-time All-Star. And here's what Bam had to say after the game.
We got to find a way to win even against teams that are, I guess you can say trying to lose.
He's right. Jazz are trying to lose. Jazz are trying to hold on to their draft pick. That's become a priority at this point in the season. Now they're shuffling priorities, or they're juggling priorities is probably what I should say. Jazz obviously are trying to hold on to this draft pick. I also don't think that they want to be starting from square one next season with this basketball team. I do not expect there to be more major transactions with the Jazz, barring something truly unforeseen. And again, that is if Giannis Antetokounmpo were to talk to his agent and he said, man, I've always loved my trips to Salt Lake City. I love Jaren Jackson Jr. I love Keontae George. Can you get me on that team? And the Jazz say, well, we've got Lauri Markkanen and Walker Kessler and a top 10 draft pick this year's draft, maybe number 7. This is after the lottery. Maybe number 6. We'll send that to Milwaukee for Giannis. And the Jazz say, well, we got a top 5 player and we got a top 25 player in Jaren Jackson Jr. and maybe another top 25 player in Keontae George, and we think we can win a championship. That's how I could see the Jazz making a major trade. Otherwise, I think the Jazz are going into next season with a roster that looks very similar to what you've been watching for the last 2 nights. Maybe a couple of veteran moves here and there, but nothing significant, certainly nothing in the starting lineup, and probably a few of the bench roles have already been decided as well. So the Jazz are going to use these final now 27 games of the season, I think, to figure out what this roster actually looks like, trying to figure out where they are competitive, where they are lacking, and still doing so while trying to lose games. And yes, it is goofy. And yes, it is wonky. And yes, it is a bad flaw of the system. And no, nobody's holding a gun to the Jazz's head saying you have to do it this way. The Jazz don't have to hold on to their pick this year. It matters. It's nice to have another lottery asset. It will make your team better in the long run. You don't want to give away a winning lottery ticket just for nothing. And by winning, I don't mean winning the NBA lottery. I mean a personal ticket or something of value that if you win too many games that aren't going to matter this season, you lose it. So the Jazz aren't going to do that, and they're going to be smart about it. But they are running into some roadblocks as far as how much they're going to actually be able to juggle. They may have to pick a path at some point before the end of the season, and we know at some point before the end of the season, but they may have to do it, Christian, earlier than they thought. They may have to pick a lane of, are we tanking or are we trying to gather as much information about this team with Lauri, with Jaren Jackson Jr., with Keontae George, I know he didn't play last night, with Isaiah Collier, with Ace Bailey, with Yusuf Nurkic on the floor. At some point, the Jazz are probably going to have to say, we know enough. We're going to have to feel like this is enough, but we're valuing this draft pick more than the data points we're getting with these guys on the floor together over these next 20 games.
That is the funny part about making a trade like you do for Tripp, even though he's not, the all-NBA player, the super big game hunting, you still are pushing your chips all in. And once you do that, you don't really give yourself a grace period of, okay, let's take a season or two to let this team figure itself out and figure out how to work with one another. And yeah, it's hard to do that while also trying to lose the games on purpose. But once next season starts, Ben, it is all in, and you really can't waste any time because the Spurs are only going to get better. The Thunder are here to stay. The Nuggets are really, really good. Who knows how good the Rockets are going to be next year. Yeah. So, I mean, you make this trade and you go all in, and that's just what it is now.
Yeah, because you traded next year's pick unprotected, you don't want to give up a lottery pick. Next year, you don't want to give the Memphis Grizzlies a top 14 pick in the draft with a chance of moving up. So you're right. You want to jump out of the gate. You want to get going quickly. You want to make sure not only do you make the play-in tournament, you want to be a top 6 team in the West. And I think the way the Jazz are playing, it's 2 games. No reason to read too much into it, though we will talk about what actually we have seen so far from Jaren Jackson Jr. throughout the show. You feel like you can compete. You feel like you can get up into a spot where not only are you making the top 6 in the West, but maybe you can win a playoff series. Maybe this is Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert's, well, I should just say Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert had been to the playoffs before, but Donovan Mitchell's first trip to the postseason when the Jazz beat the Oklahoma City Thunder. Maybe you can do that with Keontae George and Lauri Markkanen and Jaren Jackson Jr. And you're right, this window is not forever. In all honesty, windows in the NBA are very short. And when you open them, you have to take advantage. There isn't any longer the Jazz almost beat the Lakers in 6 games in 1989 or whatever that was. I guess we have the next decade to figure it out Now, you probably have 3 years to figure it out. Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to be up for a contract again in 2029. It's 2026. It's actually not that far away, and he's got a player option in that year, and maybe he opts in, but you're extending him before that or you're trading him. Lauri Markkanen's deal is going to be up by then. These are all the conversations you're already starting to think about when you pull off a trade of this magnitude with a player who's already getting paid like a prime all-star, which is what Jaren Jackson Jr. is.
You like to say, in this business, nobody ever pats you on the back and is like, oh, congrats, you finally made it.
You're never handed the trophy.
In the NBA, you never build the roster and you're like, okay, that's it. Now we're done. Now we're ready to compete. It is a constant process. So, yes, this trade is exciting and it brings a nice player to the Jazz who fits and is playing well in 2 games, but he seems to cover up a lot of the Jazz's weaknesses. I mean, yeah, you got to start thinking about what's going to happen with your pick, what's going to happen with some of these young players like Isaiah Collier, like Bryce Sensabaugh, like Kyle Filipowski, and then what's going to happen in the summer after that as well.
Yeah, the book doesn't end. There's no happy ending here. Ideally you win a championship, and then it's what do you do after that? Even the teams that do reach the mountaintop, there's just another mountain waiting beyond that. There's no finish line. So the Jazz have started to see the end of the finish line of this stage of their rebuild, but that was just step 1 to get to step 2, which was actually maybe the most painful part, but not the most difficult part. Now the hard part starts. So that's where the Jazz are going to be looking. And again, they are trying to juggle or spin 5 plates. It's get Jaren Jackson Jr. up to speed with what we're doing. Get Lauri Markkanen and Jaren Jackson Jr. on the same page. Continue to develop Ace Bailey and see how he's going to fit with the starting lineup. Get Keontae George and Jaren Jackson Jr. on the same page. Figure out which of these players around all of those pieces are going to be a part of the long-term future. And do all of that while staying competitive, but not winning games. And what you realize when you're spinning that many plates is they're going to crash. And what you can't do is afford to crash all of them. You can't afford to let all of them hit the floor. And what you're going to have to do is just simply put a couple of plates down and say, I don't want to break them, but the truth is I can't spin all of them right now. And that's what the Jazz are running into. You can't stay competitive, play Jaren Jackson Jr. 25 minutes, play Lauri Markkanen 25 minutes, develop Ace Bailey like you saw in the fourth quarter last night, where I thought he was brilliant, 4 of 5 shooting, 8 points. Had 8 points, that is, did Kyle Filipowski and Bryce Sensabaugh. They won that game for the Jazz over the final 12 minutes. And also then think you're going to lose. You can't lose. You're not losing in that spot. And the Jazz are going to ultimately value losing, in my opinion, over all those other plates that are spinning. And unfortunately, you have several other teams that are right on your heels. Memphis Grizzlies last night were up 113-103. They are near the Jazz in the standings, a couple of wins ahead of them, and the Jazz can't afford to pass Memphis now. And because Memphis just traded everybody off their roster, Jaw's not playing right now. They traded Desmond Bane before the season started. Jaren Jackson Jr. is no longer on the roster. He plays in Utah. They have no reason to win any games the rest of the season. They will win a couple. Every team does. Again, they almost just beat Golden State. But they were up 113-103 with 4 minutes to go, and they didn't score the rest of the game. I mean, they pulled the plug on the game. In fact, they pulled Taylor Hendricks out of the game because Taylor Hendricks was playing too well. He had 15 points and 10 rebounds. Tip of the cap to Taylor. He needed a lot of room to develop, and Memphis is going to give it to him, and they're going to benefit from it, and so will he. But they pulled a third-year player who's played fewer than 82 games in his career, I believe. I think he's still less than a full season, because they were worried they were going to win too many games. That's the level of emergency the Memphis Grizzlies are at with their tanking, and the Jazz are going to have to abide. The Jazz are going to have to react appropriately because Dallas is going to do the same thing. Milwaukee might do the same thing as well. And I don't know if the Jazz are going to be able to gain spots in the standings when it comes to the lottery. I don't know if the Jazz, who right now have the 6th worst record in the NBA, are going to end up with the 5th worst or the 4th worst. I think the teams behind them are going to make sure the Jazz don't catch them either. So what the Jazz really can't afford to do is leap teams in front of them. They can't win more games than Dallas. They can't win more games than Memphis. And you probably can't have that scenario while also spinning all those other plates, keeping Lauri Markkanen and Jaren Jackson Jr. on the floor together. You're just going to have to figure out a way to avoid it. It's going to be awkward. It's going to be embarrassing. You're going to get a lot of heat on social media. Might get a call from the NBA. You might get a fine. But how much would you pay to get a top 8 lottery pick? Everything. You'd pay $1 million for that. If you have to take a $100,000 fine and then a $250,000 fine, truthfully, that's good business. It's ugly. Fans are going to complain. but they're going to be happier winning next year, and everyone's going to forget that this happened. But that is the situation the Jazz find themselves in, and they've probably been a little bit too greedy, I think, in the last couple of games, thinking they can do it all. You can't. They can't. Most teams can't.
And it's almost a sign that this tank is working, right? Like being the end of this rebuild, I guess. You have some really intriguing and good young talent on the back end of this roster. So inevitably you are going to get games like last night where, Will Hardy, like you said, never thought about putting Lauri or Tripp back in, but you have those players that are good enough to accidentally win you games. And that's a good thing because it means that you have at least decent enough players, or you've got, some of these other veterans that you just added in the Jaren Jackson Jr. trade that are going to win you games. But that makes it hard. And that's, I guess, why the Jazz kind of built that cushion that they did before they made that trade, because they were already a few games ahead of Memphis in the tankathon order. But now it's going to be, I guess, a nail biter every single game, seeing what happens with some of these young guys.
It is. It's going to be a nail biter. There's going to be a lot of games that create a lot of angst for fans that are paying attention to the tank. And I tip my cap to the fans that aren't. I tip my cap to the fans who don't care about it and just want to win games and say, I don't care about another draft pick. It doesn't bother me at all. I would understand that sense a little bit more, that feeling a little bit more, if the Jazz still owed their pick next year. The fact that by holding on to it this year expunges all your debt and it's no longer anything you owe Oklahoma City, I do think there's added value into holding on to it. It's a particularly good draft. It makes too much sense to give it away. But where the Jazz are right now, sitting at 17 wins, Dallas is at 19, Memphis is at 20, Milwaukee's at 21. Those are the teams you're watching, I think, every night on the scoreboard. And, there are a couple of teams behind you that have a chance to catch you. I will say that. Most notably, the New Orleans Pelicans, who are sitting at 15 wins and, as we know, don't own their draft pick this year. New Orleans, who plays the Jazz 3 more times, could conceivably jump the Jazz. And if the Jazz are going to take a fine in any one of these games, it should be against New Orleans. If you're going to just say, sorry, NBA, I know you don't like it when we rest our players. I know you want us to play Lauri, Markkanen, and Jaren Jackson Jr. on the road. It's not going to happen. We're not going to play them. You're going to see Oscar Tshiebwe. You're going to see Blake Hinson, a 2-way contract the Jazz just signed. Maybe sign a 10-day contract to come in and play point guard. So neither Isaiah Collier nor Keontae George has to be out there. You probably have to do it. And that might be the cushion you need. And again, it's going to be ugly. You probably have to eat a fine. But it's worth it. And you can't continue to juggle the plates. All right, when we come back, top 3 stories at KSLSports.com. Stick around. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
It's time to break down the biggest stories of the day. This is the top 3 stories of the day on KSLSports.com. On 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Very happy Tuesday to everybody out there. Big show still coming up. We are going to talk some NBA basketball with Jaren Weitzman. He's got a book out about the Lakers. But we'll talk big picture NBA, including what is going on with Los Angeles. And is this the final 25 games of LeBron and Luka together with the Lakers? And then Cole Bagley will join us coming up at 11:30, giving us a breakdown on what we've seen so far in the Olympics and what to expect with Clayton Keller and the U.S. men's Olympic hockey team. But let's get to the top 3 stories at KSL Sports. It's all brought to you by our friends at J. Brooks Jewelers. You heard John this morning with DJ and PK. It's the perfect time for the holidays, for Valentine's Day. Go check out J. Brooks Jewelers. Cherish your loved ones with J. Brooks Jewelers. You can go find them online, jbrooksjewelers.com. Explore their expertly crafted engagement rings made from the finest materials. Where are we, number 1, Christian?
Number 1, BYU Basketball riding a 4-game losing streak, trying to snap it tonight at Baylor.
I wouldn't even say low-key big game. This is just a huge game for BYU. They need to start finding ways to snap out of this skid they're in. And I don't think the skid is quite as dramatic as it may seem. Yes, 4 losses is not fun. That's not what they were expecting to be running into. I think at any point, 5 out of 6 is not up to par for the talent that they have on the roster. And I think the quality of coach Kevin Young is. I think he's a very high-level coach. But that is the truth of the Big 12. You know, you lose to Texas Tech, you lose to Arizona, you lose to Kansas, you lose to Houston. I think all of those make sense. It's when you drop a game to Oklahoma State in the middle that you didn't get a chance to stop the bleeding, and now it feels like, the sky is falling. And that's certainly not what's happening. But you do need to stop the bleeding at some point, and you can't just wait until, Colorado's coming into Marriott Center in the next game. I guess we just have to get back home and win there. No, you got to get a good win. You got to get a victory that kind of changes the trajectory of the season and reinvigorates the roster and puts some confidence into the team that they can win difficult games. Baylor is not a top 15 team. They're not even a ranked team right now, but a good mid-level Big 12 team on the road is a difficult opponent, and getting a win should be a big confidence booster if BYU can do it.
This schedule is so tough for BYU. I mean, you look at 3 of those 4 games that they've lost, or 3 of their last 5 losses have been Arizona, Kansas, Houston, teams that are understandable losses, and you don't blame them at all. It's just unfortunate they come so close together. Oklahoma State is a bad loss, but like you're saying, you're not ready to hit the big red button, the panic button. But if you do lose to Baylor, that's when you start to say, okay, what the heck is going on? Because Oklahoma State and Baylor in, basically a calendar week, those are 2 losses the Cougs shouldn't be taking, regardless of what else is going on. Then you add in all those other losses, and it's like, all right, things could hit the fan pretty quickly.
And the human nature of it is you start to look down the schedule and you say, oh, if you lose to Baylor, yeah, you get Colorado at home, but then it's Arizona on the road after that. And then it's Iowa State after that. And then it's a couple of down games, Central Florida, West Virginia, Cincinnati. Again, there's not really a down game in the Big 12. And then you close up with Texas Tech. You can't start looking at it that way. You can't start looking at the rest of the season. You just got to take it game by game, as cliche as that is. And that's why you've got to beat Baylor. And again, you lose to Houston by 11. It was close. BYU wasn't right there, but it was pretty close throughout the game. Oklahoma State, a bad loss, still right there. Kansas, 90-82. BYU was right there. Arizona, 86-83. BYU was definitely right there. It's like they're close. And when you have that much talent and you have a good coach, you need to break through. And we'll see if they can do it tonight. They're taking on Baylor on the road, ESPN2, 5 p.m. Big game. Certainly going to be a lot of eyeballs on this one. Number 2.
In case you missed it, the Jazz pick up a win in Miami last night.
We talked a lot about the impact on the standings and the Jazz looking at the lottery, because that is going to become more pressing the deeper we get into the season. What we did not talk about, again, is how good Jaren Jackson Jr. has been, as you've been calling him Trip, short for Triple J, early in his run with the Jazz. Last night, another 22-point outing, another 5 rebounds, 3 assists. He had 2 steals. He was 7 of 19 from the floor, so not even a particularly good shooting night. 2 of 7 from 3, not particularly good. 6 of 7 from the free throw line. It is still interesting to watch how quickly he stepped on the floor. And I'm not going to say this is for sure what the roster is going to look like or the hierarchy, but he's just so clearly right now the best player on the Jazz. Immediately, he comes in and knows how to do things defensively that nobody else on the roster knows how to do. And you can hear him talking and pointing guys around and telling Lauri Markkanen, like, hey, I think you're in the wrong spot. I think you need to move over and guard this guy. It's so quickly changed everything the Jazz are doing on both ends of the floor. And then how much, he does things on the offensive side that the team has lacked as far as his, ease in scoring isolation buckets. He goes right up against Bam Adebayo, who is one of the 10 best defensive players in the NBA, one of the 20 best players in the NBA, and he just makes him look small. I mean, he just pushes him out of the way and gets to his 10-foot push shot, and it goes in, and you think, oh, well, that's a type of ease that the Jazz just have not seen in a very long time.
Which, number one, is good because it feels really nice to see an immediate return on your investments, right? It would feel a little weird to make that big trade, and then even though it's only been 2 games, it would feel really weird to just sit here and be like, okay, what did we trade for? And I think immediately right? But this brings me back to a conversation you and Jake had last week where talking about the situation in Memphis and like now coming to Utah, a stable organization with a good coach and no drama on the roster. Could there even be another level to his game that we haven't seen? Because he is a grown-up and he is a mature person and he knows what this is about. And his dad played in the NBA and his mom is having a very successful career with the WNBA. And he has his head on straight on his shoulders, right? So being in this environment in Utah, I do really wonder now with a stable organization, like what his ceiling could really be.
Outside of a couple of seasons, and let me go back and look at these early. Let me see if I can pull this up quickly. His early career in Memphis, he gets drafted in 2018. look at these rosters. Who else is on this team? Because, again, they had been bad because they got the number 4 overall pick, which is where he was selected. Mike Conley was on the team, and it was still Mike Conley's team, but it was kind of expected that he was going to step up and kind of take over, but obviously he wasn't ready to do it year 1 or 2. They go a couple of seasons with that kind of being the game plan. They've got some other good veterans on the team at that point, including Kyle Anderson when he was kind of beginning to enter his prime. Marc Gasol's on that roster and is very good. So it's not like Jaren's team, but the expectation is one day it will become Jaren's team. And he waits and he waits and he waits, and then all of a sudden, John Morant kind of gets dropped like a bomb into the middle of the roster and is so explosive.
Was that intentional?
No, it wasn't. But kind of. And he is so overpowering. He's such a dominant force, both on the floor and off the floor, right? He's the most exciting player on the court in the NBA for probably 24 months. And then he's such a distraction off of it. Good or bad. His dad is around the program all the time. Ja is having his issues with guns and clubs and Instagram and whatever he can find himself getting in trouble with. And it never really becomes Jaren's team. And it's not really designed to be Jaren's team. In fact, Jaren's role ends up being, how do I create space for Ja, who's a non-shooter, whose entire game is about getting to the rim? It's a little bit like building a roster around Isaiah Collier, if Isaiah Collier was on steroids. Ja's a better player than Isaiah, but it's a very specialty roster. It's a very specialized roster to build around a guy who has those pronounced weaknesses that Ja has. So Jaren kind of falls into a very high-level supporting role, but a supporting role nonetheless. He has come in now to Utah and through 2 games has been the best player on the floor. And Lauri was very good against Orlando. He had 27 points, don't get me wrong. But Jaren certainly seems like the force around which everything is rotating. He seems like the planet and everything else is gravity around him. I am now curious if that's going to be the plan going forward, and what does that do for him? What does that unlock for him? What if now Lauri Markkanen is a complementary player for Jaren? What if Keontae is a complementary for Jaren? Which with itself comes more questions. What does that do for Keontae? What does that do for Lauri? Is Lauri worth $40 million or $45 million if he's just a floor spacer next to Jaren? The answer is probably yes. But maybe it's not. And if it's not, then what do you do? And those are questions down the line. But going back to your point and what Jake and I talked about last week, what if now not only is he revitalized emotionally as a 26-year-old going to a new location with a roster that and a community and a franchise that's going to fall in love with him, what if they actually put pieces around him designed to complement what he does?
Yeah, it's a big 3. There are some nights where he is going to be the focal point of the Jazz's offensive attack. There are going to be nights where Key is hot, so you let him take 20, 25 shots. There are going to be other nights where Lauri's hot, and you feed him the ball and do what he's got to do. So that's the nice piece about, having all this talent. And ideally, this is going to be quite the offensive juggernaut for Will Hardy.
And one of the interesting things when you're building a basketball team that's very difficult and where it's different than football, different than baseball, et cetera, is that you have to find guys that fill their right position on the team. And I don't mean guard, forward, center. I mean, are you the best player on the team? And then are you the second best player on the team? And are you the third? And the hard part about drafting guys to find those spots is, do you know how long it's going to take for Ace to actually become a better player than Lauri Markkanen? Like, it's going to take 3 years at minimum. And whoever the Jazz draft this year, assuming they hold on to their pick, it's going to take 3 years at minimum. Okay, Lauri's contract is up by that point. You're actually not giving yourself a window for that to come to fruition. When you trade for a player, he steps in immediately, ready to go as a proven veteran, and he says, okay, now I'm the best player on the floor, and Lauri gets bumped down to what has probably always been his rightful spot, which is the second or third best player on a good team. He's probably not the number 1 player on a good team. And now Keontae doesn't have to be the second best player, he can be the third best player. Fitting those pieces in the right order unlocks everything because now, as you're saying, sometimes it's my night. But Lauri used to have to do it 50 nights a year. What if he only has to do it 30? And what if Keontae, instead of having to do it 30, only has to do it 15? And then Ace Baylor has to do it 5. And once those pieces all start to fit in, if Jaren can be that player, that's when you start winning a lot of games. So that's what I'm watching for the Utah Jazz. They are back in action tomorrow against a very lousy Sacramento Kings team who has lost a franchise record 13 straight games. What's next?
Number 3, Team USA Hockey. The men's team was practicing yesterday. It sounds like Clayton Keller might be on the outside of the rotation through the first couple practices. Our very own Sam Farnsworth doing the dirty work in Milan. He got the opportunity to speak to Clayton Keller.
How's the jet lag, I guess? Is the adjustment a tough process? Or?
I think the first day is honestly pretty easy because you sleep a little bit on the flight, and then you're kind of so amped up to be here, and went through the whole experience. So I'm sure after this I'll be in bed pretty early tonight. Yeah.
And then how does it feel to get out there, on the ice with these guys finally? I know it's just the first of kind of building that cohesion, but to just get out there, have the USA on your chest.
Yeah, it's a super special feeling. I have so many things to be thankful for, to people that have sacrificed to get me here today. So it's a surreal feeling, and something that I don't take for granted.
What are some of the challenges of building that cohesion and chemistry in such a short amount of time to put together into a tournament?
Yeah, I think we're a really close group of guys. Like a lot of these guys I played with at the Worlds 6-7 years ago, and guys that obviously you play against in the league, and it's great to see them and share stories from back in the day, and it just feels like we're super close already from day one.
Elliot Friedman, who is kind of the big NHL, he's kind of the Shefty of the NHL, or the Sham Sharania of the NHL, did have a breakdown of what he had seen so far at USA practice, and there's depth charts, and it looked like Clayton Keller was, at this point, the odd man out. A lot of injuries, rosters aren't working, or some of these lines aren't working particularly well. Wouldn't be surprised to see Keller make a jump into that rotation. We will talk to Cole Bagley about that coming up here at 11:30 and what he expects to see from Team USA, plus what he's seen from the women already, who've played a couple of games and have been dominant so far. Stick around. More Jake and Ben coming up next. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. It is Tuesday. It means it's time for a Jazz Ticket Tuesday. Christian, hit it.
It's Jazz Ticket Tuesday, and your chance to win tickets is right now.
Call this number now.
Call this number now.
Be caller number 12 at 801-575-ZONE. 801-575-ZONE. And you'll be on your way to Delta Center to see the Utah Jazz.
He fires the three. He hits. Oh, don't do me like that.
This is 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
It's Tuesday, Jazz Ticket Tuesday, caller number 12 right now, 801-575-ZONE, 801-575-ZONE. Wins a pair of tickets to see the Utah Jazz take on the Portland Trailblazers this Thursday, February 12th at Delta Center, 7 p.m., the last game before the All-Star break. I wonder if it's going to be the last time we see this Jazz roster in full. Maybe no Keontae George, but we will see how much after the All-Star break this team is together. Remember, they do not have to play players at home for the player participation policy. So good chance to go see them before it gets too late in the season. 801-575-ZONE, be the 12th caller through. Also want to remind you about our Beehive Meals Hero of the Week. KSL Sports Zone and Beehive Meals are honoring those who impact youth sports in our communities. Nominate the youth sports volunteer that you know for Beehive Meals Hero of the Week at kslsports.com/contests. You can listen every Thursday afternoon to JJ and Alex for the winner. It's the Beehive Meals Hero of the Week. A quick little bit of NBA news. Steph Curry is out of the All-Star game this weekend. He's been dealing with a knee injury. And yesterday, Steve Kerr announced that he was not going to be playing in these final two games before the break or in the All-Star game. And some had thought maybe Lauri Markkanen would get a chance to step in and get that replacement, that injury replacement. Brandon Ingram has been named the All-Star replacement for Steph Curry by Adam Silver, the NBA's commissioner. I do not think the Jazz are going to have any representation in the All-Star game outside of two players playing in the Rising Stars Challenge. Not any of the actual rookies on the Jazz, but a couple on the G League All-Star team. All right, last night, big win in Big 12 basketball. Arizona suffered its first loss, falling to Kansas. Again, I know some BYU fans were frustrated by BYU's loss to Kansas. A reminder of how good Kansas can be, because Kansas also did this without Darryn Peterson, the projected number 1 overall pick in this year's draft. Weird late scratch from Darryn Peterson, who said he was dealing with flu-like symptoms. He said he tried to go warm up and then decided he could not play, but apparently was not feeling this way earlier in the day. During their walkthrough, didn't seem to have any instances of flu or any hint that he would be missing the game. But according to ESPN, he said, I went into the training room. He's in there, and I said, or this is from Bill Self's perspective. He said, I went to the training room. He's in there, and I said, can you? And he said, Coach, I don't think I can. And so Self said, to be honest with you, I would probably rather him not play if he couldn't contribute, just because we would spend 20 minutes trying to get him shots or whatever. If he doesn't feel it, then I would much rather do it the way it happened. So he tried, but he just couldn't get there. This Darryn Peterson stuff is weird. Whether it's ankle, cramps, flu-like symptoms, he's not out there. He's not pushing through whatever it is to get out there. And look, cramps are debilitating. The flu is bad if you're dealing with the flu and you're vomiting. Your ankle, whatever it is, I get. Those are all very serious. When you're making the type of money these college players are now, and winning just does not matter that much to some of these guys, and I'm not trying to say Darryn Peterson doesn't care about winning, but his number one overall goal right now is to get to the NBA, and it should be his number one overall goal to get to the NBA and be the top pick. If he doesn't care, he doesn't need to play. And that's going to be a hard part about college basketball that we're going to see going forward, especially for some of these top recruits.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. You talked to Kevin Sweeney yesterday, a college basketball writer, and you asked him, are NBA teams starting to be kind of wary of this? Because it is a pattern. And he didn't seem like NBA teams care, or at least they don't care right now, right, is what basically Kevin was saying. So that does kind of signal maybe they kind of realize what you're hinting at is, Darryn could just say, no matter what, I'm going to be the number one overall pick, so I don't have to be out there grinding every single night throughout the regular season, and I'll show up for the tournament, and I'll do good things in March. But until then, I can kind of just do whatever I want. So I don't know. If these were, quote-unquote, real injuries, I suspect that teams would start to be scared off by that, but it doesn't sound like that's the case.
If the draft were today, he'd be the number one overall pick. I firmly believe that. I think he's been better on the floor than any of the other super freshmen, including Michael Brown last night, who had 45. I mean, they've had 5 freshmen that have 40-point games this year, including A.J. DeBonsa. But I wonder if he knows that he's going to be the number one overall pick, and now at this point he says the only thing I can do is hurt that or hurt myself, and there's really no reason to go out there and drive around this Ferrari of a vehicle that I am personally and risk wrecking it when I know I've done enough to be the number one overall pick. And again, college basketball is going to be worse for this. The leading headline at ESPN being Darryn Peterson lists Kansas beats Arizona, and this being the takeaway, not that Kansas just had a great win over the previously unbeaten Arizona team in a great Big 12 matchup. It's that it's about Darryn Peterson not playing. And that's a flaw, and it's because this is all about the NBA. It's because college basketball as a product has really diminished in the last 2 decades. But I hate this. And you know what I want to do is tip my cap to A.J. DeBonsa, who does go out there and play, who does seem very bought into what BYU is doing.
He plays hard.
I worried about this exact situation, which is, what happens if BYU doesn't look like a contender and he decides, okay, my next stop is the NBA. I'm going to be a top 2 pick, top 3 pick at worst. That's all I'm focused on. I'm going to miss games if I want to miss games because the most important thing is I stay healthy. Credit him that even when things have gotten bad at BYU, he seems to be playing better and better and better, including his last game where he was the best player on the floor, even though BYU lost. So credit A.J. DeBonsa for that. I think that's always been a very bright green flag for him.
Yeah, and it's not the first time we've seen this with the potential number one overall pick, right? We saw it with Zion when he got hurt. We saw it with Cooper Flagg even, and there were questions with those guys. I mean, Zion, at this point now, he wasn't even making close to what Darryn Peterson is.
No, he's getting paid under the table.
Right? So it's like there are always going to be the question of should the number one overall pick risk injury or should they shut it down or whatever, but you're right. It's sickening to a point when now you know, or at least have somewhat of an idea of what these kids are making to go out and do this. And it's crazy, man. And it's always going to be a question.
And, I remember the NBA draft combine. Kyle Kuzma had to go to the combine and actually play in the games. He was not he had not locked up that he was going to be a first round pick. So he goes to the combine. He plays exceptionally well. I think, if I remember correctly, it's the first half of the first game. He played so well. He was the best player on the court. He and his agent shut it down. They said, look, you clearly belong. We don't need to go out there and have a bad second half, much less a bad second game. So you're going to be off the floor and you're not going to play anymore. And he did end up getting drafted number 1 overall. You do have to start to wonder if Darryn Peterson's taking that same approach. I've showed enough. This is just an audition for my next job. This is not the job I want. Anyways, going to be worth watching with Kansas, but a very difficult team to play with or without Darryn Peterson. Coming up next, we are going to talk big picture NBA. We're going to be joined by Yaron Weitzman, who covers the league. Stick around. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.